about to hear a revolution in talk radio, Liberty Talk Radio, where the critical thinking will defrag your mind of propaganda-ridden viruses induced by mass media news programming. No BS here, just the facts.
And now we present to you America's quintessential iconoclastic anomaly. Wow. In talk radio, your host, Joe Cristiano.
Welcome, everyone, to Liberty Talk Radio, America's libertarian voice, broadcasting from our studio in Tulsa, Oklahoma, to around the world. I'm your host, Joe Cristiano, and this is your antidote to popular talk radio. Folks, it's time for us to take back control of our government now before this bureaucratic, oversized, and self-serving federal government starves us of our property, our freedom, our rights, and our liberty. But to do this, we must shed conventional thinking regarding our political structure. We need to be revolutionaries in thought, dissidents in action. Only after we recognize what our government is doing to our freedom and our Constitution will we start taking it back, and this program is just about that. Today we're honored to have as a returning guest economist Andy Sutton. He's formerly of the financial community, however now is involved for the sole purpose of blowing the whistle on corruption and helping people around the globe become their own advocates. And here he is, Andy Sutton. Andy, thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me back.
Now Andy, you indicated that you wanted to talk about the loss of the U.S. dollar in trade with China and possibly Russia and partially the European Union.
Yeah, there was a piece that came out yesterday, and we looked at it, Graham and I, and then he shook some trees, and we pretty much verified it to within a couple of percent, and that's not really going to skew the picture all that much. But basically what has been happening, and we've done lots of posts, and you and I have talked about this many times, is this drifting away from the US dollar by other countries as their reserve currency. And it's kind of like you're in a theater, to use the overbeaten analogy. We're all in the theater and we're all trying to really slowly back out, but everybody wants to get fully out, but they don't want to cause a big commotion. Because if that happens, everybody loses.
Right.
So this has been a very gradual thing. I mean, I've been talking about this for 15 years, so have many other people. This is not a big secret or anything like that. So this spring, Russia and China, their business, 47% US dollars. The rest of it was in euros and their homegrown currencies. So rubles in Russia, yuan in China. The rest was like 37%, 17, if I remember right, 1754.
What was it though? What was it the year before? Was it about the same or was it much less?
In 2018, towards the end of the year, it was up around 78% US dollar.
Okay.
So this
All right.
is a pretty big move.
Oh, yes.
In a short period of time. Now, here's the problem. Everybody's going to say, well, it's the coronavirus. What does the coronavirus have to do with foreign exchange? I mean, seriously. It has nothing to do with that. This has been going on for many years now, and we've been trying to chronicle this as best we can. So with this, what does this mean? Okay, so these countries are doing less of their business in dollars. That puts downward pressure on the demand for dollars outside the U.S. See, when we have the dollar standard, we've been able to export inflation, basically. That's our biggest export, is inflation. Right. That's why you've been able to see consumer prices, they go up, but it's not crazy.
Right.
Nobody's red alarms are going off for hyperinflation or anything like that. What's going to happen now is somebody has to figure out what to do with all this money that's coming back home. Are we just going to burn it or hit the delete key in that respect, or are we going to leave it in a system and try to spread it out? NASDAQ 10,600, spread it out. It was a bubble at 5. It's, I don't even know what it is now, 10.6.
Yes, about 10.6, right?
Yeah. All this money's coming back in, and they're trying to deal it off into these different, and they've done a really good job, to deal it off into these asset bubbles to keep it from hitting prices.
Right.
But there's a couple of things, and we wrote a big piece last year about one of them that's going to be a tool, if you will, for trying to handle this, is this whole modern monetary theory, which really isn't that modern. 1905, the book was written about it. So the idea of a modern monetary theory is you print until prices go up, or in this case, you don't have to print. You let money come back into the U.S. until prices come up, and then you raise taxes to pull the money out of the system to try to stabilize prices. See how that works?
Does it work?
Not really. So here's the thing. What have we seen the first half of this year? We saw a huge giveaway back the end of March, April, whenever the 2.2 trillion was passed. That went out. Now you're starting to see articles in different places about having tax increases. We need tax increases on corporations, whoever, whatever. So now they're setting the stage to pull this money out of the system, because guess what? It's hitting prices. It's starting to hit different prices. Things are going up. People are noticing. So we've got to do something with it. And here's the thing: it's only going to get worse, because there's a lot more dollars that still have to come back. So if you take the 53 or the 47% of Russia-China trade just between those two, that's still in dollars, ship them all back here. They have to be spread out, dealt with in some manner. So the easy solution would be, okay, so Jay Powell over at the Fed, he says, we're going to burn it, for lack of a better word. We're going to take this pile of currency, we're going to get a blowtorch out, we're going to pour a little gas on it, we're going to blow it up, burn it. That money's gone. That would be the easy thing to do. Now, by extension, what happens if we start burning the currency to keep prices in check? What are foreigners going to think about a U.S. central bank, not really a U.S. central bank, but you know what I mean, burning money, like Zimbabwe? Burning money doesn't work for a reserve currency, because the only thing the reserve currency has going for it right now is confidence. And that's a house of cards, and it's starting to shake. And people are blaming all of this on this virus. We saw last fall, it was October already, late September, especially when the U.S. government's fiscal year ended at the end of September. It was starting to shake then already, and nobody had even heard about any bugs. So global aggregate demand was rolling over back then already. Take a look at something like the Baltic Dry Index. I mean, I'm not sure how pure that is anymore, but I mean, it rolled over. So we were seeing, signs back then. There was a recession coming. And if you go back to the first part of 2019 and pick up any Financial Times, Business Week, The Economist, any of these magazines, and you look in there, CEOs were talking about a big recession coming up. First part of 2019 already. At the end of 2000, until like the last 3 months, you remember we had this avalanche of CEOs of big companies retiring, resigning, taking their package, turning in their options, and going home. They knew. Why else would you leave? Oh, yeah, we're going to spend more time with the family and blah, blah, blah. Yeah, okay. Yeah. I believe that for one. But there was a bunch. Disney was the big one. Disney was the biggest of those bunches, if I'm recalling correctly. So the point is, the world knew, the business world, the economics world knew at the beginning of 2019 that there was an event coming, or an economic event, or recession. All right? So everybody starts positioning and things like that. Gold starts its rise right about the same time. It's been going up steadily. It's well over $1,900 again. Why? Because it's the currency of last resort. Everybody knows it. Now, I'm sure it's going to get hammered back down, because I just talked about it. So it's guaranteed tomorrow it's going to go down like 50.
Time to buy
that's
then.
That's the way it always works. Yeah, I'll make my own dip. That's how it always happens. But there's a global awareness that, hey, this money that we've been using for almost 100 years now as a reserve currency, It's shaky. It's really shaky. The country is, 26 trillion, 570 odd billion in debt, and that's not counting it the right way. That's counting it the cooking the books way.
Right.
It is a huge amount. It won't be paid back. Everybody knows that. So how are we going to deal with it? Well, they're going to burn it down. Literally. This is why, if you look across the board, everybody wants freebies. We've heard about payments to all sorts of different groups, and I'm not getting into specifics because I'm not into that kind of thing. All these different groups, big groups, corporations, they want tax breaks instead of tax raises. People want more of the $600 per week, which is ridiculous because people are getting paid more to sit at home than they were working.
Right.
That's not efficient. We can't afford to do that. We couldn't afford to do that for a long time now. Now, I will say to the people that are in that situation, I mean, I get where you're coming from, but the problem is a good portion of them, they're just out blowing the money. They've had a rent moratorium since April? A mortgage moratorium. Different banks are supposed to try to help you out and give you better terms. So how far is this going to go? So now we're looking at stimulus bill number 4 that's in the works right now. One side says they want $3 trillion. The other side says they want $1 trillion. They'll meet in the middle. You know how that works. And it'll be another $2 trillion. And we can hike that national debt up to $28.5 trillion from $26.5. So, this is gonna play through like that. And when that happens, when that debt goes up even further and we put that much more money or take that much more money that's coming in and dump it into American hands, we're going to monetize demand. So I'm sitting here, I have no money in my bank account. I'm watching a commercial. I really want one of those. That's a nice looking car. Hey, there's a big screen TV. Hey, there's a new iPhone. That's about $1,300. But I can't do anything because I'm tapped out on credit. I have no money in my bank account. My demand is pent up. So when they give out the $1,200 to each person or the $600 a week extra in unemployment, they're monetizing the demand. And what is that going to do to consumer prices? Up they go. So now we got to pull some of that money out of the system using modern monetary theory, and it'll be all hunky-dory and everything will be fine again. So a couple things to watch out for. Bubbles. NASDAQ for sure. Treasury bonds. Dollar bubble. There's a dollar bubble, literally. People are talking about gold being in a bubble. And like I said, it'll probably get whacked down again. I have no doubt. And if it stays at where it's at for the next month, I'd be thrilled. Well, don't you want it to go constantly higher and higher? No, because I don't want people to think it's a bubble and just start speculating.
Right.
I want people in that market who are serious and know what the heck they're doing.
Right.
That's what I want. And if you're a gold owner, I know you get this. You understand. If somebody's understanding gold, then they want that to sit at $1,900 too for a while and consolidate a little bit. Yeah. So more and more regular Americans are getting into gold now too. I have a number of friends, former clients, etc. They're contacting me saying, "Hey, is this a good time?" Well, the best time to plant an oak tree was 50 years ago, but the next best time is today. So,
right.
Get yourself some silver,
right.
And get yourself some volume anyway. But yeah, this is what's going on. Also, along with this, so we've got national debt boom going up. Russia, China backing away from the dollar. Syria is not done yet. Venezuela is not done yet. So keep an eye on those geopolitically. We still haven't won in Syria. And I told you guys, now you got it. I told people back, 7 years ago now?
That's right.
Syria was on the table. It was 2013, like almost exactly 7 years ago. I said, Russia is not going to let them go. And they're not. So, and it's not pat Andy on the back. This was not a big secret either. But it never hits the news that most people listen to because whatever. Agendas, it's too complicated. I don't know what the reason is. So that's going on geopolitically. We also have an instance of capital controls and we also have an instance of price controls. So, price controls, prescription drugs. And I know my inbox is going to blow up because Gam and Gramp can't afford their drugs. Using a price control is not the way to make it affordable. All it's going to do is create a shortage. If you took Econ 101, draw yourself up a supply and demand curve and throw a price ceiling in that's below equilibrium, and you're going to end up with a shortage.
Right. Yeah.
So that's just how it is. You can't immute that law. Oh, well, we'll just fix it sooner. We'll force them to produce it. That's what's coming. We'll force these companies to make certain quantities of these drugs. That's what the Soviet Union did back in the 70s and 80s, and we called them all sorts of dirty names. We called them everything but a nice kid on the block.
Right.
And now we're walking right down that same path.
Yeah.
Where the government's controlling more and more of the factors of production. That's not a good thing. The other thing, capital controls. You know there's a coin shortage going on right now.
Yeah, isn't that strange? A coin shortage. Yeah. I've never heard of that before.
That's being blamed on the virus as well. I'm not sure I see how. A lot of businesses are starting to say bring exact change if you want to use cash, or they're saying don't bring cash at all because it might be dirty. It might have coronavirus on it. Well, let me tell you something. People use $100 bills to snort cocaine. They use them in drug transactions. They put them in the most of places, and nobody cared before about this.
That's right.
This now is a problem.
Yeah.
Right? See what I'm saying? Now it's a problem. All that other stuff, that doesn't matter. It's all, that's fine. No, now it's a problem. So now it's a problem. I gotta laugh. Otherwise, I'm just gonna cry because this is not good. So the capital control there. News out of the U.S. Mint. They're limiting by a lot the number of gold and silver coins that they are releasing, and the guidance from the Mint says 12 to 18 months before they're going to be able to resume normal production.
But
so right now,
why is that?
Well, here's the cover story. The cover story is we have people get sick from the virus, so we shut down one of the assembly processes, manufacturing, whatever. So we can stamp gold or we can stamp silver. We can't stamp both. That's the cover story. What I think is going on is, hey, Russia and China, they've been buying all this gold. And, gosh, we have this BRICS bank that's been approved in concept and has capital, like real capital. And, wow, our dollar's shaky. Maybe we better start to hold on to some of this gold because we might need to back it again. And we're starting out behind the 8 ball.
Yeah, we sure are.
And gold and silver limiting production, that's going to push prices up too. So the more I push it, it's a self-reinforcing cycle. The more gold and silver go up, particularly gold, the more people become less confident in the currency, which means they're going to rush into gold, and it's going to push it up even more, which makes them less confident.
Right.
And it just keeps going round and round. Yeah, around a self-reinforcing cycle. Silver to a lesser extent because, it's been coinage in history in many, many different instances, but most people, when you talk about silver, they're thinking about an antimicrobial. It used to be used a lot in film, but we don't do so much of that anymore. But there's still some. There's those big screen TVs. There's silver in those. It's used for all these different processes.
Right.
So it's consumed. But it's also a money because everybody knows what a silver dollar is or a Kennedy half. Most people know that if you go before 1965, your quarters, your half dollars, your silver dollars were 90% silver.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah,
so,
whenever I find one or if I can get my hands on one, I save it. I don't throw it away. I don't give it away.
Yeah,
because it's real money.
Yeah, most of it's scrubbed out of the system by now by collectors and so forth.
Right.
But, so that's fairly common knowledge. So those are capital controls. And so I'm seeing this picture starting to play out, and this whatever's going on with this bug is not going to make anything better. It's going to make it worse. I mean, GDP dropped by 32.9% in Q2. And I don't know if that's cooked or not. We haven't looked yet.
Yeah.
We haven't run the model.
Yeah. I don't know how we're going to survive this because of course, we don't have jobs. We're destroying whole segments of the economy. Retail, for example, is decimated totally. I mean, it's non-existent almost when it was the largest component of our economy. And how can you do that and then print money and not expect something to implode somehow? I don't know something how this plays out. Well, let me ask you a question about the nickel. The nickel is I think 75% copper and 25% nickel. And if you, and if you add up the actual cost of a nickel, it's almost a nickel. In fact, a few years ago, a nickel cost 8 cents to make. I mean, just the cost of the metal itself, not the actual cost, right? And it's gone down to little less than 5 cents. But so it's costing the government money to print nickels, but it should, because it should be worth a nickel. Now, when I heard
penny's the same way.
Yeah, the penny used to, the penny used. In fact, now if you can still find old pennies prior to 1982. You'll find them. In fact, some you'll find that now that it's worth about 2 cents. So if you save those pennies, you can double your money and not have to work for a living, you know. But my point being is that when I heard that the nickel was the production of nickel was going to be stalled for a while, I thought that they were going to change it from being nickel and copper to something like, tin or some fake metal, and I thought that was a reason, and all the other reasons were camouflage because the government couldn't afford to buy any more. And I don't know if I was right or wrong.
It's probably a little of all of the above, really. If you go, there's a great site, and I'll throw a link up on the blog. It's coinflation.com. It gives you the melt value based on current prices for pretty much every coin in existence.
Yeah, right.
You can look, and it's not just the 90 and 40% silver ones. Actually, the first batch of coins you're going to run into is the current issue coins. The quarters, the dimes, the nickels, and so forth. And they'll tell you what it's worth. The quarters and dimes, they're clad. They're pretty. There's a copper band. They're kind of junky. I wouldn't bother with them.
No, you can't say.
1965, then that's a whole different story.
Right.
So 1965 and 1982 are the numbers people need to remember.
Yeah.
And even now, with it being the penny being 95% zinc and 5% copper, it's still worth twice as much.
Yeah.
So penny's a screaming deal right now.
A few years ago, I read an article about, and I don't recall who the billionaire or multi-millionaire was, but he went to the government, and this is several years ago, about 4 or 5 years ago, and bought $1 million worth of nickels. And they actually delivered it to him, and he put it in a storage place, not a vault, but a storage place. And they said, well, aren't you afraid I'm stealing it? He says they get a hernia by the time they finish,
Oh, really?
Really, he said they're so heavy. He said you need you're going to make a commotion if you're going to say it's not going in there and stealing something and running out. I mean, you need yourself a forklift truck. $1 million worth of nickels. He says, I'll never lose that money. And he was absolutely right. And since then, it's gotten worse and worse. Yeah, anyway, but I'm getting off, and I think that's kind of neat when, and Americans are very ignorant when it comes to money. Now, the question I have is that how is China going to unload their dollars? I mean, if they have a lot of dollars and they're devaluing it, they're not going to get much for it. So aren't they?
No.
Are they not causing themselves an economic problem?
Well, yeah, and I think this is one of those things. I mean, let's not let's not paint any false pictures here. I mean, the Chinese, they still have a lot of communistic tendencies, and they're greedy like any other person. I mean, that's a trait of human nature, is greed. So they've got, over $1 trillion in treasury bonds sitting over there. They have all these dollars. So what they've been doing with the dollars is they've been using them to buy tangible stuff.
Right.
Like tons of gold. They're not buying 100 pounds here and 100. They're buying 100 tons.
Right.
50 tons. I mean, them, Russia, and some of these other countries, they're buying gold hand over fist.
Right.
So that's where some of the dollars are going. They've been stockpiling all kinds of stuff: oil, natural gas, agriculture. And Russia is the biggest grain producer, grain exporter in the world. It's not us, it's Russia. So they have a nice little co-op going between them. And they don't have to worry much about shipping routes because they can do everything, over ground. I mean, it's probably difficult, but, I'm sure they do it by sea as well. But, they're close in proximity, and they're I don't think they really like each other necessarily, but I think they're taking the theory that the enemy of my enemy is my friend.
Right. Exactly.
They don't like us. Neither of them like us particularly, so they'll band together and they can freeze us out. And what are we doing? We keep poking them in the eye with a sharp stick. Yeah. With these threats of sanctions and doing all this other stuff and running the WTO and whatnot. Here's the thing. If we wanted to, and this was something that actually one of your listeners asked on the YouTube thread a while ago, if we were going to do anything productive in this country, we need to get a lot more stuff made here again.
Right.
We need to be. We don't need to be handing out $600 a week. What we need to be doing is taking that $2 trillion and building factories, fixing infrastructure so it can serve the new factories. Stop giving tax breaks to companies that outsource U.S. jobs. There's lots of policy that could be enacted that would, but see, here's the problem. We're beholden to all these people now, so we're in a tough spot. If we say to China, we're going to make all these things, all this junk you find in Walmart, we're going to start making, 50%, 75% of that stuff here. Well, they're going to say, well, it takes a long time to build a factory. So you're going to need us until you can get to that point. And guess what? We're not going to send you anything else. Walmart's empty inside a week.
I saw a documentary on... Excuse me, I'm sorry for interrupting you, but I didn't mean to do that. But I saw a documentary on Detroit and all of the factories that are just been sitting there for decades, rotting to death. And but the problem is if they refurbish, all these factories and people come in, people with no education at all, and Detroit is notorious for having a graduation rate of like 30% or something like that of high school kids. I mean, they have no education, they don't have any skills, but they want to start at $95 an hour. And he said, how do we, or whatever the number is, if it was high, it's like $75 an hour or something like that. And we have to learn that we've become a third world nation, and we have to start at $5 and $10 an hour if we want to build a company. And it's not that the owner is raking in all the dough and becomes a millionaire and wants everyone to starve. Is that they cannot compete. If they're paying a guy putting bolts on a wheel or something like that, paying him $75 an hour. So that's why they go overseas. And I don't, anyway, it seems logical to me. But I mean, would we rather be out of jobs and see cities rot and just literally rot to death, or take a lower pay and have a vibrant economy?
Well, the problem with the lower pay, and it makes perfect sense, if we had a stable dollar, if the Fed actually met one of its halves of the dual mandate and kept a stable dollar, which steady prices, if they actually had done that instead of just squandering the vast majority of the dollar's value, we wouldn't need to make $75 an hour. we could do what, how it was back in the 60s, 70s, wherever, probably go to the 60s, before we went off the gold standard. And, things were a quarter, 50 cents. You'd go to the grocery store with $5 probably and come home with a fairly nice, attraction and assortment of groceries. Now, you're looking at like $200 to go shopping.
Oh, yeah.
So we don't have stable currency. But here's another thing that's been going on with that, since we're talking about wages. A bunch of people in different places have been using this coronavirus situation to backdoor $15 an hour minimum wages in different, not everywhere, but in different places. Are they going to be able to cut that once this is all over? Or are we going to be stuck with the higher minimum wage? You can't cut them back to $9 an hour because they're going to get used to living on 15. Prices are going to catch up with it because that's how it works. That's why they always have to keep increasing the minimum wage, because prices catch up and they're still in poverty. But here's the thing, and this is important. What do we need for a hyperinflationary spiral? There's two things we need. I'm putting you on the spot.
Oh, well, you actually asking me a question. Okay.
And everybody else, too. I'm on Economist 101. I'm putting you on the spot.
All right. I mean, you need an excess supply of paper money backed by nothing. All right.
Yep. There you go. One.
I got one. What do you know? Well, 1 out of 2 is not too bad.
Wages.
Yeah.
Wages.
Yeah. And high wages. Right. Yeah.
So it's called a wage price spiral.
Right.
So when you think about it, it's really just a price spiral, because hourly wages, that's a cost. There's a price for labor in different areas. It's different depending on what type of field you happen to be in, but there's a cost of labor, and that's the salary and the benefits and all that other stuff that has to go into that. And people need to realize, okay, so I'm going to work at a burger joint. And I'm going to flip burgers and dunk fries and do all that kind of stuff. And I'm saying I want $15 an hour. And the franchise owner is looking at his books and all that. And he's saying, but the guy who flips burgers and dunks the fries and does all that stuff, he only generates, say, $11 an hour in revenue for the store. Then he has to pay taxes on it and all this other stuff.
Right.
So it's a lot less than that. If you can't generate your wage, you're not going to get hired. And that's the problem. So we snap the wages up to $15 an hour. Guess what happens? Unemployment. Because a lot of these smaller businesses, I can't justify $15 an hour. So I'm just not going to have as many people working. I'm just going to cut some jobs. So we're creating, a bit of a spiral there as well when we start doing this crazy stuff with the minimum wage. So the McDonald's owner, whoever owns the burger joint, you're not getting your extra value meal for $2.99 anymore. Oh, wait, I'm sorry. That was 20 years ago. You're not getting it for $7.99 anymore. Now it costs $12.99 because we have to pay the workers $15 an hour. And it just goes and goes.
Yeah, it all has to be a free market system. I've always been against the minimum wage. In fact, and if people say, "Oh, that's because you always made a lot of money," no. Let me tell you, you know how much I got paid on my first job?
Price control.
Nothing. I got nothing. You know why? Because I didn't want. I'm kidding. It was a camera store. I applied for a job there. He said, I don't need anybody. I said, well, it's okay. I don't want any pay. I said, I like cameras. I fool cameras. I said, I want to work in a camera store. I'll work for nothing. He thought I was nuts. This is on Castle Hill Avenue and in the Bronx. And I used to take the train there going home from school. And I used to stop there. And every day after school for about 2-3 hours, I'd work there. And I didn't want to pay. But every Saturday, he gave me a few dollars. And then the Saturday night, I had a good time. But I really enjoyed it. I learned a lot. I learned a lot about retail. I made a lot of mistakes. I really screwed up his inventory one time, But and yet he paid me, and what he paid me was probably more than I would have made if I had a minimum wage job. It was kind of funny the way it worked out. But my point is, I always hated the minimum wage. I said, if you want to make money, if you want to make more money, make yourself valuable. But the minimum wage now. Do you know how much the guys in the people in Detroit were making? It's most of the factories. Oh my goodness! I mean, they were like $65, $75 an hour. Hell, that was more than I was making. As a business owner, I couldn't believe it. I couldn't. And then we want to know why it went overseas. And now all these people they're homeless. They have no job. They have no jobs. They're homeless. And you've seen Detroit. I've seen documentaries on Detroit. Most of the houses have been cut down, burnt down, and whatever, because people are leaving the place like crazy. They're all on welfare, sleeping on the street, and whatever. Well, but no one wants no one wants to work for minimum wage. They want more than that. I say get rid of all that, and then if you want to make less than a minimum wage today, don't go to school. Drop out. Drop out of school, and I can guarantee you someone will be happy to pay you $5 an hour. But people drop out of school, and then they apply for a job, and they want $75 an hour. Well, we're screwed. That way. What's that?
Yeah, pretty much.
That's the way it's. That's why Detroit. That's why Detroit is a dead city, because they were making $65 an hour to put the front left wheel, on a car.
But here's the thing: they had the jobs bank towards the end. And it was people that weren't needed because production was not requiring their presence. And they would sit there and read the paper and drink coffee and do stuff like that all day and get paid their regular wage to do it until they were needed.
Yeah.
Well, I don't agree with the minimum wage either. It's price control. It's another form of price control, and you have to constantly raise it, and that's the point. Yeah. If we had a stable dollar, you wouldn't need a minimum wage.
All right. I'd like to get back to China again for a second. Excuse me, but China has all this money. Has money. I mean, we have debt. Well, by bonds and whatever. How are they going to get rid of this money if they're not going to use the U.S. dollar in trade any longer? They're going to have to. How do they get rid of it, in your opinion?
Yeah, I don't know what they're going to do. I mean, they can start doing what China's doing with all their extra dollars. They could start, buying tangible stuff. Honestly, if it was up to me, I would put it into something that's going to produce something tangible. I would invest it in that, not some stock or anything like that. Not that kind of an investment. I would take all this extra money, and you're going to blow the dollar up, but it's blowing up anyway. So if you know that, and okay, we accept that. So all right, let's take whatever's left and build us something that we can use to make goods to trade with other countries, so we don't have to run external deficits. Yeah,
they'll probably, in other words, transfer the dollars to other countries, right, in trade for something of value.
Yeah, and I mean, to build factories, you're going to need materials. You're going to need technology. You're going to need people. You're going to need all this stuff. So put the money into that.
Yeah.
We have a huge amount of natural resources here in this country that we could use. I'm not sure I don't think we can get out of it at this point. I mean,
I agree. Yeah. But
4 years ago, the national debt was $20 trillion 4 years ago. Now it's going on $27 trillion. It's going parabolic.
Yeah.
I don't think we get out of this, honestly.
Well, I don't see how the dollar's going to last.
No, it's not. They're going to burn it down. And then we'll get some kind of, Globo, or who knows what it's called. It'll be cashless. It'll be a digital currency. And there's all kinds of stuff out there about digital currencies and people paying with their phones and all that. And they love that here. They love doing that. So, and that's what we're going to get. We're not going to even have a tangible currency. I mean, the dollar's a sheet of cotton fiber, basically, with some ink on it.
Yeah.
But you can still take it home and stick it under your mattress if you want to. Digital currency, you're not even going to be able to do that. Yeah. It's just going to be, ones and zeros. So yeah, I don't I don't. The 5 years looking out, I don't think the dollar's going to last that long. And I hate doing that because things will make a fool out of me because it usually does. But I just don't see how, in the current state, going like it is right now, I don't see how we make it 5 more years.
Yeah,
I think we're going to be in a war because we've got trade wars going on, we have currency wars. You know what comes after that?
Well,
so I think we're going to have a major war.
Yeah, don't the countries use war as a cover-up for their own malfeasance or whatever? All their mistakes. They screw up the whole country. Let's go to war, and then everyone rallies behind the government.
Yeah,
that's what I'm afraid of.
Yeah, and it's been used time and time again, and it always works.
Yeah.
But, if the rest of the world says, you know what, you've got a junk currency, we're not going to use it anymore. We're going to use this thing, whatever it is, if it's, an SDR or whatever, the BRICS end up doing, that's back. They're going to say, hey, we're going to back this with gold, or we're going to back it with oil or silver, or, cow flops even. At least it's tangible.
Yeah.
It would be they have some value. That's the problem. Our dollar is not meeting the intrinsic value portion or the criteria of a money. And when you don't have those 4 criteria met, you don't have a money. You've got a currency, and that's what we have. Yeah, and all that holds that up is confidence, and there's not much of that.
I have a theory, and it's a little off the page, but I can see someone coming up with the idea of saying, "Hey, let's use platinum, as as our currency." They probably, I mean, not the governments. I'm talking people. Saying, let's accumulate platinum because platinum is more rare than gold. It's basically an industrial metal more than anything else, but it's used in jewelry and stuff like that. And it's universal, and you can, and probably may be worth a tremendous amount of money, in hard times. And no one's talking about platinum, and I often wonder why platinum, the most expensive, one of the most expensive, more expensive than gold and more rare than gold, is not discussed or put on, put in some sort of line with the other currencies.
Well, you know why? It's because of its history. Its history is an industrial metal.
Yeah, right.
And right now, I believe platinum is probably a screaming deal at $900 an ounce.
Yeah,
I think that's like somebody just giving it away, basically.
It was $2,400, and I think the cost of mining it is something around between $700 and $800, about $700. Yeah. So the margin there is very, very low relative to the other currency. Very small. Yeah.
Platinum and palladium kind of they flip flop every so often.
Yeah.
Because they're both used in catalytic converters for cars.
Yeah.
So whichever one's cheaper, all right, we'll start making them out of platinum for now. But here's the thing: go on any of the big warehouses, coin warehouses, precious metals warehouses. You're not going to find much. There really isn't that much that's available for sale to the public at this point. So people would, if people were going to use that as a money, then it would be a great money. They'd already have to have it.
Yeah,
that's the only problem. I think we'd see silver just because of the billions of tons, probably of 90% and even some 40% silver that people have grabbed and taken out of the system. Yeah. It's recognizable. It's common knowledge that it's actual silver. It even makes a different sound when you bounce it off the table. So I think you'd see silver and maybe even pennies or nickels, for really small transactions, just because they're worth something. Yeah. You can take copper, zinc. One's antifungal, the other one's an immune system booster. So I mean, they have uses.
Would you recommend people to save their nickels because they are worth a nickel? They actually are worth a nickel.
I would.
In fact, the nickel is the same as it was back in, I think, 1880 when the first nickel came out. And it's the same composition as in 1880. it's 25% copper and 75% nickel, and it's the same composition as over 100 years now. And you say, well, what's around that has the same composition and given the same value? Nothing except for the nickel. Nothing. So anyway, that's So and if gold is running with the
premium is high.
Sorry, that my brain is not working well today. It hasn't worked in a long time, but that's another story. But you're right. It's going for $2,100, $2,100 an ounce. That's getting, now it's going to go much higher, but it's kind of pricey for the average person to spend over $2,000 for one coin. So
what people do is they'll buy the fractional coins, and if you look at the 10th ounce gold eagles right now, you buy 10 of those to get yourself a full ounce, and you're paying $2,800 an ounce.
Oh yeah,
because of the huge premium.
Guess what I saw the other day? And when I saw this, I had to buy it. It was 1/100th of an ounce gold. Yes, I saw that, and I had to read it like 5 times before. And so I said, I bought 10, and it only cost like $200 or something like that. I said, this has got to be the coolest thing I ever bought in my life. I don't know what I'm going to do with it, but it's so neat.
Because that's a deal now, because now you have a 1/10 of an ounce of gold, and you only pay $200. If you went to buy a 10th ounce coin, from one of the big wholesalers, you're going to pay like $280, $290.
Yeah. I mean, it was really a good deal, and they all come down little packages like the big coin. I said, wow! I had to do it. I didn't really have any allocation for it, but I have to do it. Anyway,
I bought a bunch of those Sunshine Mint little ingots, the little gold grams ingots, just because they're cool.
Yeah.
And I saw them on eBay, and I'm like, that's not really a bad deal. I punched it up on the spreadsheet and looked at, that's not too bad, and I'll get a couple of those.
Yeah.
They're cool.
Yeah.
That's what I wanted to cover.
Yeah.
And get that out there.
Andy, what do you recommend that our listeners do under these circumstances? I mean, it's knowledge is great, but knowledge not used for for the purpose it was intended is worthless. So what would you recommend to a listener right now that they do?
If somebody's listening and they have a paper portfolio, whether it's stocks, bonds, options, what have you, dollars, whatever, paper portfolio, I would strongly urge an individual in that position to acquire some silver. That's a good place to start. You spend a couple $1,000, you're going to get a handful of coins.
Right.
And you're going to feel like you have something in your hand. I would not start with gold at this point, unless you want to get those little gold grams or something like that.
Yeah.
Start building a precious metals portfolio. And people say, well, what's the right percentage? It's whatever works for you. It's whatever helps you sleep better at night, knowing that you've got real wealth in your hand. For some people, it's 10%. For other people, it's 75%.
Yeah.
And anywhere in between. So it's really up to the individual person. I would not buy collectible coins.
Right.
I would not buy Morgan silver dollars or anything that's numismatic. There's all sorts of details and minutia that you need to know. Otherwise, you'll get taken out behind the woodshed. So I would build a metals portfolio. If you already have a metals portfolio and you still have what you consider to be an overabundance of paper, I would look at the things you're going to need in the next 5 to 10 years. A roof on the house, maybe a new well pump, a vehicle. Buy forward with your cash. But turn your cash into something you can use.
Yeah. And, I remember, this is over 20 years ago, someone said, Joe, you should have some gold. This a patient of my wife's, he's passed away since then, and he was a very wealthy man. I said, buy gold? How do I buy gold? Don't you have to dig it out of the ground? I had no idea. So he told me to go to this store. I said, I went with them. And I said, well, I'd like to buy a gold coin. Believe me, I knew nothing. I'd never seen a gold coin, So I said, how much is a gold coin? He says, the price is up a little bit. He said, one, this is a U.S. coin. This is a U.S. coin, right? Top dollar, right?
20 years
he says,
ago.
no, he says, is $320. I went, wow, that's a lot of money. Wow. Could you imagine if what we know now, if we knew then what we know now, I'd have part-time jobs. I'd be working on weekends collecting money just to accumulate, a few $1,300 coins, Anyway, but I never forget that he's $320. I said, holy smoke! I mean, like the world came to an end. I can't believe that $320.
Now it's $2,100.
Now it's $2,100, right, with the premium, right? Anyway, well, Andy, I want to thank you so much for being on our program. Boy, we almost chewed up an hour. We weren't supposed to do that. You're a bad boy.
I am. I really am.
Well, let's do this more often. I know I've been lagging along and I've been having all sorts of technical problems, and I hope the studio works. I hope this works, and I hope we can get the things going and we can get together more often, okay?
Yeah, if you have time, let's do an update next week. See what's going on with
that'll be fine. If
we'll
it worked this time. I don't know if it can work twice in a row.
Well, we can always hope, right?
All right, yeah. Just let me know because I'm very flexible. Let me know which day is good, and then we'll set it up. Okay.
We'll do. Sounds good.
All right. Thank you so much, Andy. Take care.
All right.
All right. Bye now.
Bye.
Let's see.